Last time, I mourned the loss of my 21-year-old cat Gizmo, and I finished work on the furniture inventory system, allowing the player to acquire a much-needed flashlight in The Dungeon Under My House, my second freshly squeezed entertainment project. If you've been following along, you know that The Dungeon Under My House will be a non-violent, first-person dungeon crawler, and as a freshly squeezed entertainment project, it will be a polished, playable prototype that provides a complete entertainment experience. It will be freely available for desktop computers as well as mobile devices, with no ads, no in-app purchases, and no personal data tracking. Hello and welcome. My name is Gianfranco Berardi. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I encourage curiosity and support creativity through my solo indie game development studio, GB Games LLC. I'm really happy that you're here to join me on this indie game development journey. It has been a number of weeks since my last video report, and a lot has happened since then. Let's get to it. As I said last time, I decided to have the flashlight turn on and off based on the light levels of the grid cell you entered. It didn't seem to make sense to have it be a player option, as you would always want to turn on the light when you needed to do so having it be automatic seemed like it would make the game pace smoother. Now that the party has a flashlight, I worked on illuminating the darkest parts of the dungeon with it. Dynamically lighting up the dungeon grid cells was actually pretty straightforward, although I wasn't happy with the way it felt like you were walking down a narrow hallway with very dark walls on either side of you. But at least it was functional. With the flashlight lighting the way through the dark hallway, you can now see the next obstacle, a heavy metal door. I originally wanted a drop bar that blocked the door from opening, which required the party to lift it together, which would encourage the player to go back to the bedroom to get a full party together. But due to doors now taking up the entire width of a cell, it seemed awkward to have a drop bar. Where would it be? How is it held in place? What happens to it when the players do remove it? Does it go on the floor or next to the wall? Does it need to be a wall on either side of the door to make this work? Doors in game design are hard. Ultimately, I decided to just make the door big and heavy. It was simpler, required no separate piece to worry about designing and creating art for, and made development a bit faster. The only thing I had to do was code this door as requiring a minimum number of party members to open, and in this case it required the player to get a full party to open it. Opening the door, the party should find their way to the rest of the dungeon. But up until this point, I had been creating the dungeon in code, which was tedious and error-prone. It was not a sustainable situation. I knew I needed a level editor, but instead of creating my own, I decided to use Tiled, the general-purpose level editor. I spent time learning how to use it, creating layers, tile maps, and figuring out how to import the JSON file it creates. Creating the dungeon is so easy now. Whereas before it would take some time to create walls and hallways in code, I can just place tiles and floors and walls and just place and configure other objects with ease. I made this huge room with some lighting in it, and the main intro sequence is now complete as I added a way to tag cells and create a trigger when the party enters those cells. With the primary intro sequence finished, I decided to focus on fixing a few issues. 1. The flashlight now looks a lot better. Having the main central beam of light with a pair of shorter beams on each side means the player can see things in the dungeons a little easier, while also not revealing too much. It basically feels a lot more natural. 2. There was an issue whenever the player was facing away from a cell with a wall behind you. That wall would block the entire screen. A workaround would be to never design levels with adjacent cells with walls between them, but that seemed like a silly limitation to put on my level designs due to a rendering bug. So, I fixed that defect. Then, I started creating new and updated art for the dungeon. I created this dirt wall. Ta-da! You can tell I'm not an artist. Bringing the total types of walls to 2. I'm not sure how permanent this will be. I also started working creating new brick walls and plan to replace the placeholder stone walls that have been doing a great job of placeholding in my dungeon so far. I really want to create a good cohesive look to the game, but I also need to really figure out what kinds of locations will be in the game to create the art to serve those locations. Thanks for watching, and stay curious. Now if you want to learn when I release The Dungeon Under My House, or about future freshly squeezed entertainment games I'm creating, then sign up for the GB Games Curiosities newsletter, and download full-color player's guides to my existing and future games for free. Again, check the links in the description.